and today we'd like to welcome Becca to our podcast. She is a very active member in our outreach group, and we're excited that we finally have talked her, convinced her to come be on our podcast. So, Becca, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So that's a trick question. Before I got hurt, I was a different person, right? I was working as an attorney on a case in Florida. Right before I got hurt, right? Several months before, I was working on a case in Florida, traveling all over the country on the weekends to jump out of airplanes. Skydiving is kind of my weekend hobby, or was. And then back to Florida for work and this, that, and the other, right? I'm a perpetual student. I love school. So I had 3 graduate degrees by the time I was 22. It just wasn't normal. So I don't know. I was just a go get it all the time person that,
Sure. Very active.
Yeah.
And I think you still are.
I'm getting back to it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So right now that you had mentioned a little bit about, your accident, I think that as members of Bind and for us taking a little bit of while to get to know you. So what's so unique about it?
So my accident was actually a skydiving accident. It was a landing problem. I had traveled to the state of Alabama for a jump. It was a record-setting jump for the state. So we prepared for it and everything. On that jump, we exited. We built the formation we were supposed to build to set the record on that jump. So, okay, check, that's done. But it was somewhere a little bit off from the airport where we would usually land because of weather, because weather is very regulated in skydiving. So we got out somewhere a little bit different and had to land somewhere a little bit different. I was on a small parachute that goes really fast, and I tripped when I landed. And my brakes, if you will, came off because parachutes fly kind of like an airplane does. So kind of lost my brakes and bounced.
Okay. And bounced on your head, I guess.
Yeah. So I shattered both femurs and brain injury, obviously.
Welcome to the club.
Like it's a fancy club or something.
Right.
No, it's like when someone turns 50 and you go, welcome to the club. It's like, is that really a club I want to be a part of? But we have fun. So you told us a little bit about your life before recovery. Before your TBI. Always on the go. So how long ago was your accident?
Almost 10 years ago to the day. So
wow.
October 11th of 2013.
Okay.
Wow, October 11th.
Yeah.
I don't even know what day it is today.
It's the 5th. Yeah.
Honestly, I think that in a very small time compared to 10 years, I think I only met you maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and you've made so much progress just in front of me. I think that's crazy. That's pretty awesome. But okay, so 10 years ago, and obviously I met you years later, but how was your recovery? What did it take for recovery for you?
My recovery, everybody would tell you, is a little bit different than I think what traditional brain injury recovery is, because I had the physical attributes as well, my femur shattering. So I did inpatient recovery at Shepherd Center in Georgia, because my family Googled it and said, okay, best brain injury recovery, something for a very acute accident and all of that. So I was there for about a month, and my mom stayed with me, in a kind of hotel type place close by and things like that. And then I came back to Dallas. And when I got back to Dallas, I went and toured Pate, and ended up at Baylor, but only for a few weeks, because all my recovery seemed to center around my legs and my physical problems with my legs for the first 5 years after my accident, right? I was having to see my doctor once a week, have x-rays once a week, PT 3 times a week, and this, that, and the other. So it was very physical focused at first. But Bind has really been part of what's worked in terms of helping me recover from my brain injury and from not having the traditional types of therapy.
Right. And I think that's really important to kind of clarify, right? Because if you're very focused on your physical, and I think that's really important too, because that was part of who you are, right? Skydiving and doing all these, I don't know, I want to say athletic because I think it is athletic, but I don't know if everyone will like agree with that.
I mean, I was playing soccer too.
Yeah, well, this all that, you know, these changes physically like really change your life for sure. But so now that you're working here on Bind to recover, how does that have to do with your brain and how you're recovering with your brain?
Yeah, Bind's actually helped me a lot because Bind is a very safe place to make mistakes, to mess up and things like that. So one of the things I struggled with just in general after my brain injury was kind of social connections and things like that. So Bind is a good place to come to be in a group of people and kind of learn social skills again, right? How to treat people and when to talk and kind of the basics of things like that. But Bind is also a good place in my mind for preparing to go back to work, right? Because I intend to go back to work and all of that. That's sort of what's on my mind because I don't need the same kind of services that I needed from Bind initially. When I got here, I needed the initial basic help of how to send an email, how to schedule your time, how to plan life accordingly. And now I'm kind of really focusing on those social skills of learning to not be in control, right? As an attorney and things like that, right? I was always in control, learning to breathe, and it doesn't always have to be your way, and it doesn't, right? It still works out just fine if you do it, just go with the flow and do it with somebody else. But Bind has been a great place for me to learn, and it's still learning, right? But to learn that skill of trying to say, okay, you know, you're not going to get fired for this, but you're having trouble emotionally regulating this. So it's kind of an emotional playground.
I like the way you say that. So it's not just learning the social skills. It's also understanding that there is, because of the brain injury, probably more so than just regular people, there is a little bit of that emotional thing that you didn't have to deal with before your brain injury that, okay, wait, maybe I can't quite do as much, like, as, you know, I can't do 8 hours behind in the courtroom and then 5 hours on the soccer field anymore. And then I'm upset about that, but that's not the goal. The goal is just to get back to where you're functioning the way that you're happy. And
especially because so much changes with brain injury. You lose your social connection. And in my mind, sort of my level of friends I had, right, were very independent people, lawyers and doctors and things like that, right? Skydiving is an expensive hobby. Kind of just to relearn reintegration into your whole new way of life, right? There is no comparison about one's better, one's worse, but it's very much different. So it's kind of trying to retrain yourself how to live life, quote unquote, these days, if you will.
Right. I totally understand that. And I'm back up just a little bit. How did you hear about Bind? I'm going to guess Baylor or Pate.
Actually, no, that one's really easy. My mommy found it on the internet.
I love those mommies.
Yeah, so I heard about it since I was only at Baylor for a few weeks, and I only toured Pate. I didn't hear about anything through there because I was so worried about the physical part of everything. But my mom started bringing up Bind to me maybe 2 years after I got hurt in the midst of surgery and everything. And I went, no, I don't have time for that. I have so much other stuff going on with doctors and physical therapy and surgeries. And right, I don't have time for that. And then when I finally finished all of my surgery and I went, okay, now I can pay attention to my brain, then I joined Bind. But initially it was all kind of because my mommy Googled it.
Yeah.
I love that.
I do too.
I love that response.
Well, and I do remember in the beginning that you weren't, I'm not going to say you weren't happy to be here, but I'm going to say it was a little obvious that this wasn't your first choice of places to be, and you have done like a 180 on that, 100%. Like you're always happy and ready to pitch in and help and happy to be here. We're used to, like I said, I mean, I'm not going to say you weren't happy. You just tell there was somewhere else you wanted to be. So I'm glad that you've been able to find us as a social connection as well, too, that we really helped you there. That's great to hear because that's a new one. I mean, it's not new. That's what we all tell everybody, but to actually have someone give us that feedback that we're actually accomplishing that goal makes me feel good and proud. So,
yeah, well, it was part of it, right? And I assume it's this way with a lot of people post-brain injury, but I didn't need this place. This place was below me, right, because of my background and where I came from. But that's mostly because I didn't understand what all of my deficits were.
Sure.
I didn't know that I needed as much help as I needed because I unintentionally kind of avoided doing things I didn't really know how to do. So bind has been a really great place to practice those things about, okay, look, you really do have these deficits. Let's identify it and come up with a way that you want to address it instead of just trying to figure it out for yourself.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to take a quick pause real quick and just remind our listeners to go ahead and click that like button, click that share button, click all the buttons like I always say, so you can continue listening to us again every Thursday. We're here for your listening pleasure. And so I'm going to go back. You said something now. I'm going to try to remember what you said. Brain injury.
Yeah, brain injury. But I think that you explaining like who you were before and like the positions you had and like that responsibilities that you had before, I would like to talk to you about the responsibilities you have here at Bind now. So you're really involved in the outreach and advocacy unit as well. So tell us about that and what do you do and what are you like really leading here at Bind?
Okay, so for outreach, it's something I really enjoy because that's something I really struggled with when I first got hurt, was finding a way to explain to people what a brain injury is and what kind of help that I needed. So outreach is where we do a lot of new member onboarding and things like that to schedule tours and speaking events and, things like that, which was important for me because I had so much trouble identifying resources when I got hurt, right? Because my brain was so injured, I didn't know what resources I needed. Right. So it's great to be able to talk to families and prospective members and explain what Bind is and what Bind can offer, and kind of a third person perspective to people that are so new to this type of injury and this type of recovery. It's really great to help with scheduling speaking events and things like that. Yeah. And Bind, like I said, is a great place to venture out. I'm trying to venture a little bit more out of outreach and into things like media and merchandise and things like that because Bind is a safe place to get out of your comfort zone. So it's a great way to improve your life kind of in a safe environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you said, I'm sorry, Kezia. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, since right now that you were saying getting out of your comfort zone. So what are you doing now that's like, I think that's something that we would like to focus on, but if you don't want to share, it's okay. But like
a podcast.
Right? So why is it difficult? Like, what is difficult about it after having a stroke or, sorry, that was me. After having the, the TBI, like what's difficult about being on a podcast or anything that's really like this, social media wise?
In general, I always felt like I needed to prove that I was quote unquote enough, right? That I don't need any help, that I'm perfectly self-sufficient, that I can do everything by myself and things like that. So it was good to get kind of into a skill that I needed some help on and needed some other feedback as a part of learning to work with other people again, right? To really try and venture out. I was worried about getting on video because I'm like, but I don't want anybody to be able to Google me, right? And then I went, okay, I don't know. I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not ashamed of anything, right? It's maybe just paranoia about what could go wrong. But in reality, life doesn't really work that way, and you kind of have to get over it. So Bind is just a good place to really try to think about things and push your limits.
Yeah, and I really like that view for sure.
I do too. I think that's great. I mean, you're not the only one that feels that way. Believe me, when Kezia and I first started this, we were like, wait, you want us to do what? And when we get done and be like, did we really just say that? Did we say the right word? Did we say it right? Did we, So, but you're right. And I'm glad that you keep bringing that up, that Bind is a very safe place. And even on this podcast, we know we make mistakes. We know we say the wrong word. We hope we catch ourselves and correct it. But we're not ashamed that we said the wrong word or that we messed up. We tend to kind of laugh at each other a little bit and move on and encourage and keep going. And I think that it's great that you've gotten all that feedback from Bind, that we're pushing you to try new things. And with that, so you kind of mentioned it, I'm curious. So we are looking at going back to work. Maybe not in the law field, but maybe.
Right. And that's something else that I'm getting, especially now, out of Bind a lot. I have no intention of going back to being a lawyer. And the short and easy of it is I wouldn't hire me. I don't expect somebody else to either. Or I'm not going to ask somebody else. That wouldn't be fair. But I actually, for as many degrees as I have in a variety of fields, actually what's joined me is that I really want to get a job where I'm helping other people through recovery of some sort, especially because I've had so much of that experience myself with brain injury and rape recovery and things like that. There's something really positive. It just feels so good to help somebody going through what you've been through yourself, right? Brain injury is a lifelong recovery process, but that's suddenly the field I want to go back into. So I'm looking at going back to school starting next semester. I've just finally gotten to where I go, okay, no, that wouldn't be overwhelming, and I'm doing so much already. But for some type of rehabilitation-focused education. But it's just, that's something else you can learn at Bind, right, is how to adjust to your life now and what you're trying to do to get started on the right foot.
That's great. So you are looking at school.
I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I actually think that right now what you're saying is like you want to be able to help others, and especially if they're going through a situation that you have similarities in. So right now would be a perfect time to do so. So what advice would you have to someone that's a new, was just experiencing a brain injury, or is even a caregiver, or someone that has had this experience and don't know what to do?
That's a great question. In my mind, I'd say it gets better. It's hard to appreciate when you first get hurt just how much improvement you're going to make, and especially your family. I know my family was going, oh my gosh, our life is over. She's never going to be functional again. Some of that in terms of what we heard from doctors and kind of expected recovery, but it's so much unknown that you kind of get lost. But it's something that you really can figure out, and it really does get better. But it takes time. And unfortunately, time is one of those things that you can't just rush and say, okay, let's hurry up and quick. It takes time. You just have to be patient. But in my mind, for recovery, you sort of get out of it as much as you put into it, right? I come to Bind trying to identify my problems and identify what I'm struggling with, and then talk to staff, and they're trying to help me understand as calmly as they can, right? But that allows me, even if I get an emotional turmoil or I have some emotional fit, to then stop and think, okay, what was said and how did that really come about, and how can I adjust and do better tomorrow? So it's a learning curve.
It is. And that is another good thing about that here is like we can get emotional with, learning constructive criticism, again, after a brain injury is probably one of the hardest things I've had to deal with. So I know what you mean. I get very emotional sometimes. I'm like, but I can always do it this way. I always did it right. And now you're telling me. So I totally get that. But, Becca, I do want to tell you thank you so much for joining us. And I'm so, so glad you did, because, like I said, you've done a totally 180 since the first time I met you. And I'm so encouraged to hear that you've got lofty goals, because I wasn't sure about those. I was a little scared to ask. But I'm so excited that you joined us and shared with our listeners.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it. Yeah, you guys do a great job on this podcast, so keep it up.
Well, I can't wait for people to listen to yours. Honestly, thank you for taking that risk and crossing your, your comfort zones. So if anyone would like to contact us or contact Becca, make sure to let us know by emailing us at bindwaves@thebind.org, or follow us on Instagram. And also make sure to visit the website, which is thebind.org/bindwaves.
And again, don't forget to like, share, subscribe on all your favorite platforms. And again, on YouTube, click the notify button. Again, we're everywhere. But if you want to watch and see our pretty smiling faces, you're only going to get that on YouTube.
And you can check it every Thursday. You will find us for every episode on your favorite platform. So until next time.
Until next time. We hope you've enjoyed listening to Bind Waves and continue to support Bind and our nonprofit mission.
We support brain injury survivors as they reconnect into the life, the community, and their workplace.
And we couldn't do that without great listeners like you. We appreciate each and every one of you. Continue watching. Until next time.
Until next time.